Arson About existed then. It had been written as a commission to me from DBDA, and they'd been commissioned by someone else. And suddenly everything had changed, and they wanted a different age group, and I couldn't alter the play that I'd written for Year 9 to become for Year 5 and 6. It was an impossible task. So it kind of lay there, and I don't know how the link came with Andy Kempe to move it into a publishing situation with Nelson Thornes, but Andy was the series editor there. Maybe he asked me whether I'd got anything that was available, and I said, well, there was this. And that relationship with an editor who I'd never had before, so I'd had help from DBDA throughout in developing the original script, but with Andy, we decided together that I think I decided that I wanted to make it a hard to swallow for Year 8 and 9. So using the ideas from Hard to Swallow, we would make it a play that could teach drama skills to Years 8 and 9. So things like two-touch drama, which I speak about in Hard to Swallow, we use that in the salad scene, and to great effect in the quite tragic scene where the news is being relayed to Molly's parents that she'd been killed. And I love the way that scene was developed using two-touch. And then the equivalent to the Brussels sprouts scene and the suicide scene in Hard to Swallow with all the body props would be things like the fairground scene, which is a lovely scene. So that's what I worked on, having quite a strong starting point. And again, having an editor, what a joy, because I got feedback. So this is the first sheet that I had from Andy, and I'm certainly not going to say everything, but you can see how it helps to have this kind of detailed, intelligent feedback to someone who's basically an intuitive playwright. I like the idea of the cartoon photo love style of presentation, so that was going to stay. I like the constant references to fire, but feel they're not varied enough. Reference to a thesaurus might be useful here to see how many synonyms we can find for fire, conflagration, ardent, incandescence, and so on. And that idea developed in the early parts of the play about Ian's love for Molly and Molly's love for Ian, and gave it a little bit of comedy and a bit of light relief. Could more be done to establish the parent-daughter relationship in this scene? Yeah, a lot was changed in that. Kylie, she becomes Molly, comes across as being a bit empty-headed and hedonistic. For example, she is upset by the idea of the move, but all too quickly switches the argument to her desire to go to the fair with her friends. In the final play, it builds, her desire becomes an excuse to leave mum and dad. So it kind of builds a more natural pan of emotions. In terms of structure, pace and depth, it could be very useful to have a scene between Shuttle and his nan to contrast the familiar relationships before launching back into the Kylie and Ian story, Molly and Ian story. And that happened. So we gave a little bit more weight to the Shuttle and his nan's relationship. Add more detail of characters and relationships. You'll remember Andy didn't want to do too much punch as a published play because he felt there was no character and relationship. Here he is working with me on developing something that I wasn't very good at. Fantastic to have this kind of input. I'm not too sure to the reference to Ian's mum's boyfriend being in prison. Is there a danger here of playing on negative stereotypes? And that original idea was changed so that Ian's dad had died, which removed that problem and also introduced a much more empathetic view to Ian and that. How did they get to Butcher's room? Is this all a bit too sudden? Well, you can remember that how I did that was to do a kind of theatrical thing and the magic of theatre, and that became a thing. So you could go from one thing to another, and that became a comic effect. I'd like to know a bit more about these parents. Their characters might have been built up more earlier and could be developed sympathetically here. Given that the audience now know that Kylie, Molly, is dead, but at this point mum and dad don't, dramatic irony could be used to quite gut-wrenching effect if this scene was drawn out further. And it was a little bit. I didn't want it to become too long. Tricky bit of dialogue in the revelations. Hard to do this naturalistically without sounding terribly cliched. I wondered if using a device such as choral speech or disembodied voices could add to the dreamlike feel that these conversations tend to have. You could revert to a naturalistic dialogue on the crystalline "she went to the fair." Now, this is where I thought, oh, brilliant. two things I can do. One, I will go and research it. I went to an ex-student of mine, Martin O'Neill, who by this time was a senior detective inspector, and I asked him to give me the kind of way in which this news would be revealed. He gave me that whole scene, and I then two-touched it and turned it into a scene where occasionally there would be details of words, but not throughout. And as I said, that's one of the best scenes. If you get the video, the way that was directed with the moving chairs, moving furniture, the idea being that the furniture is removed in their mind, the furniture is being removed in their minds as they learn their daughter's died. A great scene on the DVD. I'll talk about that later. But the 2018 DVD is well worth a look just for that scene alone. One of the best that I've been involved with. I say involved with because I actually didn't direct it. One of the girls' mums, Annie Sanger-Davis, directed that, who's a university lecturer in drama. She came in, I was ill one night, and she did that to this idea that I'd had of the furniture removal. And it was great with the furniture moving from under them. Absolutely superb scene. Andy also gave me this, which was a kind of structuring idea. No time to go into it in detail, but just, you can freeze frame and look at it. Just great to have this fantastic input. Then it goes to publication. And how much Andy stuck up for the way in which I was writing. So this is his letter to the publisher. One of the great strengths of Mark's writing is that he captures the teenage voice so well. Thanks, Andy. None of the language used in the play is really heavy-duty offensive stuff. What you are suggesting is censoring in a way I feel unacceptable. Another strength of Mark's plays is the way he gives young people the chance to play about with theatrical images and be inventive, rather than prescribing exactly how things are done. I don't wish to insult, but I don't know how much you know about contemporary theatre or the way drama is taught in schools. Drama teachers and their pupils will find this a very enjoyable play to work with. They'll know about physical theatre and modern technologies, and this play gives them a chance to use and develop this knowledge in a very creative way. Plays that were certainly put out in English departments are very traditional, and this is what we were finding with the drama festivals. We were moving beyond that in a world where Frantic Assembly were just coming into the scene. And I wasn't attempting to develop anything new. I was just doing something that played to the strengths of student creation. I didn't have time. I was in the middle of doing Dan Nolan, but I wanted to get it premiered, and a great teacher locally, Paul Mills at the Westgate School, he offered to put it on as a premiere, and that went on at the Winchester Theatre Royal. Fantastic to have that. Thanks, Paul. It was a tremendous production. Sadly, I haven't got any photographs of it, but that's the original poster, and that was put on in, I think, 2004. And it was also published. A lovely cover there as well. Published as Arson About, and I think DBDA really missed a trick there. It became one of my better selling plays, and it's still published. And it was great to have this in my pigeonhole as a teacher, offering my play along with others that were, you know, kind of proper. It was at this time the only play that I had published not by DBDA, so that was quite an exciting thing for me. And sadly, it was the only one I did with Andy. I think he must have retired or something. But it was a great experience for me to be writing a play without being involved in directing it. Thanks for watching.